and welcome to another DynamicsCon session. My name is Belinda Allen from Smith & Allen Consulting, and I'm a Microsoft MVP in the data platform space, specifically Power BI. And you might know I also used to be a Microsoft MVP for Dynamics GP. So basically, I love anything that's ERP data and Power BI together. And this session is called 5 Cool Ways to Use Power BI with GP, Sales Order Processing and Inventory. And so let's dig right in. Now, this is not a how-to session. If you want a how-to session, I'll give you a link and you could download the slide deck, and your how-to will be how to build this paper airplane using origami. Instead, this session is an idea session. It's why should I use Power BI with some of my reports? And I hope to be able to answer that. Now, I do want to point out, first of all, this is where you could get the slide information. I'll put it in the chat as well. I do want to point out that the demos you're going to see during the presentation are recorded videos. I do that so I can make sure and show you the maximum amount of time, and you don't see me hunting for a comma, for example. But during the Q&A, I'll have the live data open so that we can take a look at it and answer questions off of it. All right, here's our agenda for today. We're going to look at an AR report, which technically is not part of SOP or inventory, but it's relevant to the sales process. We're going to look at some inventory reports. We're going to look at open purchase order reports, some open sales order documents, and then we're going to look at historical sales from the sales order documents. And the last 10 minutes or so of the session will be dedicated to a live Q&A session where you could type in your questions. But I do encourage you to type in your questions along the way as you see fit. I'll be monitoring the text conversation and answering questions throughout the system. So go ahead and take advantage of that. All right, so let's dig into section number 1. Let's take a look at the AR report that I built. Now, this is Power BI desktop that we're looking at, and I'm going to go ahead and start the demonstration here. And one of the things you're noticing is I'm making sure that I'm logged in to Power BI, and then I can publish this particular report to the Power BI service, or powerbi.com. And we'll take a look at what's in the report as soon as it publishes. Now, once it publishes, I can go to the Power BI service. And as you could see in the workspace I created, I could see both the data set and the report. And you should group together in workspaces things that are common. And what I'm going to do now is actually create a Power BI app. So I'm going to give it an app name, and then you'll notice the description underneath it is required. That's to help users understand what's in the app. And you could add a logo. And as you see, I've already added in the fist logo from DynamicsCon. You'll apply a color theme. And then once you apply the color theme, then you're going to go through and set navigations and set permissions. And permissions is who can access it. Now, I'm going to let the whole organization access this, but if I want to do individuals, it'll look at my Azure Active Directory to see other individuals that I could share this with. You can make the data set available for other people to build their own reports or to even make copies of these reports, but I don't want to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and publish the app, and then let's go to the Power BI app and see it. I could just click on the link there and get to it. Now, notice that the look is a lot cleaner. Now, this is nothing to do with a Power BI app or a Power Apps app. This is pure Power BI. Now, I have a age trial balance over here, and this is aged independently of GP. The Fabricam company has weird dates. I also have an aged bucket by customer class, and then I have the grand total for each of the aging buckets listed here. And then I could choose to look at either active customers or just customers that are on hold. So one of the things I could also do is select one of the lines and right mouse click and drill into a detail report. And now I'm looking at all the documents that make up that particular number. There's a back button to take me back to the report. Now that time I looked at a specific bucket for a customer, but this time I'm going to look at an entire customer. And now I can see all of the transactions that make up that customer. And notice it fills out the filters automatically for me. I can also hover over the filter icon on the report and see what filters are in place. And this is how this one works. And likewise, I could drill into an entire customer class and see the aged report for the entire customer class. And once again, I could filter in and see which is listed. Now, that's how that works. You could see I have hold options and actives. And if I choose hold, then I can see all the hold customers on hold, and I can see all of their documents. Now, I want to pause here for just a moment. What you're looking at here is a smart narrative. This is part of AI that is built directly into Power BI, and anyone can use it. You don't have to have like the most expensive version of Power BI. And this is actually text. Now, I want you to watch the text as I select just active. It will change depending on what's selected on the screen. And that is pure smart narrative information, just words. Now, this is another way you could see. I'm just showing you how you add in a smart narrative by clicking on the smart narrative option, either under insert or from the middle. So here I am actually just populating another little report here and putting lines in it, and I'm going to add the smart narrative in. So you could see how easily it is to let Power BI help you with some of the AI pieces. I know a picture's worth 1,000 words, but text are actually words. So why not look at the actual text as we go along? So this is my AR report. And again, I think, let's see, I am republishing my report here. Yes, I'm republishing my report, giving it a little bit of an update because I've added to it. And that should take us close to the end. Let's see where we go next. Oh, here we go. Just a little bit slow. Sorry about that. So once this finishes publishing, we go back to the website. And now I can simply click on Idea 2 and hide those pages if I want to. And then once I do this, I'm going to republish one more time, so that in even the AR detail, I want to hide that one. So when I publish this again, what's going to happen on my report, and this time I'll go directly to the app and make it a favorite, and then I can simply go through and look at the app information again. I'm going to publish one more time. Let's do that. We'll click on update, then we'll go to the app. But we're going to go to the app using the app function on the left side. These are all the apps that I have installed. So I'll just select that particular app. And now you notice I only have the one page because there's only one page on that report. I still have the ability to drill down to the detail. It's just that detail page happens to be hidden. And that's something that's going to make the experience for the end user a lot better. So hiding those columns that you could drill down to are something that is just really pretty powerful. Now, once again, I'm logged in now as Adele. Adele is somebody else in our company. And if she goes to the apps, it's not there automatically, but she could get the apps, either clicking Get Apps or clicking on Get More Here. And if she selects organizational, she'll just see the apps from our own company that's shared with her. Once she selects that app, it will install for her, and now she will have access to using it. So this is Estelle's version of the app, and she could make it a favorite for her as well, and then access it from whatever source she sees. So it'll be under her favorites, and she can get to it that way. And it's just all about making the user experience better, making it a lot easier for her. So let's go on and recap what we just looked at in this particular report. We looked at building a Power BI app, and we updated it as well. And then as a different user who had access to that app, we installed it internally. We looked at drill through reports, and we looked at smart narratives using AI. Now let's move on to inventory reports. So again, I've got a little video here for the inventory, and I'm going to go to the workspace first as the owner of the workspace. And now you can see I've added in my inventory report and I've included a dashboard. So I'm going to start with the inventory here, and to add something to the dashboard, you just hover over it, click on the push pin, and then you can select the dashboard you want to include it with. So now if I go to the dashboard, I'll be able to see I have a couple things out there, one from AR, and then I have unsellable options. So let's go, and we want to make sure that this is published to the app itself. So I'm going to go ahead now and open up the app. It's been published. And now when I go to the inventory report, which now appears along with the dashboard, I can see other pieces of information. Now, first we're looking at up here, we're looking at inventory adjustments and variances by this month and returns by this month. These are things that happen in our inventory, and the variances here are things that change our inventory that are not purchases or sales information. And I've also included items that are not available to sell, things that are sitting in as damaged in service. And I've summed those up so I could see I have 12 items in my base unit of measure that are not available for resale. Now, what I'm going to do next is go on to the next report because I want to see how my inventory changes over time. And so there we go. I want to see how inventory changes over time. And what I'm going to do here is I have the document date listed across the bottom, and then I have the inventory quantity across the bottom as well in base unit of measure. And the green dot is my inventory cost. And if I play this, I actually get a visual over time. I'm just looking at a couple months in 1 year. I can see my quantity increasing and decreasing, and the more my inventory changes dollar-wise, that circle gets bigger as well. So now I have not only a visual representation, but a video that explains what my inventory is doing. And this is one of my favorite ones. This is a turnover report for a 12-month period where I'm looking at current inventory and then what's been sold, purchased. Then I back out the beginning inventory. I'll show you some of the things I use there, the average inventory over 2 years, and then how many turns. And you would need to go in and set this to like the last 12 months using a relative date. Because I'm in Fabricam, everything's in the future, so I can't go back and do that. But once you set that, you would click on apply. But as I'm looking at my inventory turns by class, I can see server 2s is my best turnover and server 1 was my least. Now I can see when I go to my dashboard, I have a visual cue here telling me that I have items that are unavailable to sell. Sometimes we end up getting items stuck in our inventory because they're sitting as damaged. And I did this by setting an alert on my dashboard where a threshold is set. If it goes above 0, I want to be notified in Power BI and by email as well. So if I switch to my email, I could see I have an email alert. And if I open this up, I could see that the current value of unsellable items is 12 and my threshold 0. And I could click on Go to Dashboards, or I could click on Go to Insights. And Go to Insights will open up that one visual on the left side, which happens just to be a card with a number. Then on the right, it's using some AI to see, is there anything that could provide insights? And there happen not to be here because those are just summary quantity numbers. But it's really cool that you could get insights on your threshold as well. So these are some of the really cool things that you could do with inventory. I love being able to monitor what is not sold, because it's far too often I walk in someone's site and when they've done a return, they either put it as damaged and put it in service and so forth, and then they never do anything else with it. And then you have that stuck in your total quantity on hand, but you don't, it's not something that's available to sell. So these are some things that you would probably want to focus on. As we keep going, and you saw this screen already pop up when I boo-booed on my video there, I do have this SQL script in there. This is one that those of you who have purchased the first book that Mark Polina and I did, this is in there, but I have it in the slide deck. It's just a script, a view for SQL that will help you get that turnover rate. Now, one of the reasons the turnover report is so cool the way I did it in Power BI is in the turnover report for GP, you're only looking at calendar year. So if earlier in the year it is, the less information or the less value it's going to provide. So this is how I did it. I took the current inventory and I just said, okay, I want the quantity on hand plus the quantity not available. So I'm getting everything that's out there. Then I have my sold. So I actually am looking at quantity sold for that period, and I am doing a -1. And then I'm taking my purchased information, getting the quantity assembled, purchased, and adjusted. These are all my purchases. And then I'm backing those two out, my sold minus my purchase. And then I'm subtracting that from my current inventory to get the beginning inventory. So I'm starting with what it is now, and I'm working my way backwards. To get the average inventory for the year, I'm taking the beginning inventory and adding the ending inventory to it and dividing it for 2 by the year. So if you want to look at quarters, then you should change that number so that you're looking at different pieces of information. Now, also, then for the turnover, I have my items sold, and I am dividing that. This is just DAX code by the inventory, the average inventory for the year. But I've got this if statement in. So if it's 0, then I'm going to just divide by 1. Otherwise, I'm going to divide by the inventory average. And if any of that yields an issue, then it'll give me 0 for my turnover. So in the inventory section, we have looked at changes to inventory with an animated scatter chart, which is something that is underutilized in Power BI. We looked at some DAX for rolling month inventory turnover, and we looked at dashboard alerts. So let's move on to purchase orders. So here we are back in the Power BI service, and we're going to go in and take a look at the open purchase orders. And you can see this time I've moved my dashboard up on the list on the left. So I have all of my items on order and the quantity. So I could see all of everything that's all of my inventory quantities. And then over on the right area here, I have items that are actually on the POs. So these are on open POs. And so I could see all of those. On the left side, I have numbers like this is the number of open POs approved. I'm using the advanced PO, drop shipped, new approvals. That's advanced PO gives me approved and unapproved. And this is generic total inventory details. So I could use the filters over here, for example, just to see approved or unapproved POs. Now, I can even take this a step further. This looks like it's the only report. It is not the only report for purchase orders. I could come over for the purchase order remaining, and I can take a look. So I'm going to look at some of these. And then if I right mouse click, I could go to the details and see the details are all the line items on the purchase order, including if they're linked to a sales order processing. So I can see there's an order, that's the order number, and that's actually the particular line item sequence number for sales order processing. So these are all of the different things we can do. Now, let's say I'm taking a look at this information and I want to ask Adele, who manages our inventory, about it. I could select comment, and then the comment pane will appear right in Power BI service, and I can write a comment to Adele. So I want to do it specifically to her, so I'll start with the ampersand, and then I'm going to ask her a question within the comments. So I'm asking her why there are so many of this particular item on POs. And then I'll go through and post my comment and then close that screen out. And then I can continue on my way and wait for a response to come. So what I'm going to do now is switch to Adele. So now Adele is in Power BI. You can see Adele's name there. So she's going to open up the open purchase orders. And she could at this point just open up the chat and see the individual chat, or she could actually go to email and see a notice with the email. So she opens up chat, and now she sees the question on the chat, and notice there's a bookmark icon there. So she could click on that bookmark and take a look specifically at that report, or she can go straight to the chat itself and start responding. So here we are in the chat. If you click on the bookmark, it puts focus on it. Now I've got a little more idea which particular visual Belinda wanted to ask about, and then she could respond, hey, there was a big order in sales order processing, so it's pending, and we're waiting for the receipt of all of the items. So she'll post that back to Belinda, and now back in Belinda's email, there is an email from Power BI telling me that Adele has responded. I'm going to click on Open the Power BI desktop again, or the report, and now I can see the focus is on that particular visual, and I can open it up and I can respond back to her. So we can literally have text conversations about some of these documents, which is pretty darn cool. So let's take a recap of what we looked at in the purchase orders. We looked at comparing our inventory stock to open purchase orders. We looked at using the filter pane, and we looked at comments, a feature inside of Power BI service. Now on to the things that is most synonymous with the distribution inside of GP, and that is sales order processing. And we're going to look at the sales order processing documents in two ways, one for all open documents and one for historical documents. So open documents, we'll go ahead and begin with a little bit of a chart here that shows us our items on order and the quantity. And then we have a count of sales order processing documents. And before I begin, I want to show you this role feature. So you could set up something called row level security. So I set up a role called Greg, and then I used some DAX expressions to narrow things down to just Greg. So when Greg logs in, if I set up security in Power BI service, he's going to see, look at the numbers change, only the sales order processing documents that pertain to him. So row level security is something pretty valuable. So let's go back into the Power BI app, and here we go. So let's open up the sales order processing, and here's that same document that we're looking at for everybody. And what I want to do here is, let's see, I'm going to open it up one more time. There we go. So now this time I didn't get that error message. I think I just did that a little too fast. Okay, so here are all of my documents. I can see what's on PO that is related to or has a relationship to sales order processing. I can see the total dollars sitting open in returns and all of the other documents as well. I could choose to subscribe to this particular report. So when there's an update or change to it, I get a notification in the email reminding me to take a look, which pretty much would be every time it refreshes. Now, here is something that's really kind of cool. This is sales opportunity, and this is something that you do not get in sales order processing by itself. What we're looking at are all of our customers. I'm pulling out the credit limit from the customer card. I'm getting the balance from the customer view, so I can see what is the posted AR balance. I'm also extracting all the unposted AR payments, the unposted invoices, both in receivables and sales order processing, and then I'm getting an adjusted balance. So when all of these happen, and this is obviously a big credit limit or a big payment, either one, I'm not sure if it's a return or a credit limit, this would become the adjusted balance. And then I'm getting the available credit, which is the difference between the two. And I have put a visual of a stoplight here. So the more credit that's available, the light will turn green, and the less credit available, it'll turn red, and if it's 0 or negative, it'll be red, and then everything in the middle would be yellow. And if I go through and resort this report and sort by customer, perhaps, you'll see some of those other stoplights appearing. So it's a good visual cue as to who would actually be someone that we want to try to do sales to. And you could export this information into Analyze for Excel. You do have to download an additional feature in order to be able to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the Excel file. You will need to log in, make sure you're logged in using the same user ID. And once you're logged in, you will have your data that's in that data set like a pivot table. And you do need to do DAX measures in order to be able to use the numbers as values. So for example, if I scroll down and put the customer into the rows, just like you would do any other pivot table, then to put in a number, I'm going to need to make sure it's a measure and not a number that came from the ultimate data source. So I put all of my measures in an area called amounts, or most of them anyhow, and I'm going to go through and get the available credit measure and put it in there. And now I have an Excel report that shows me all of the available credit that I can now use Excel to slice and dice the data, including even taking this data and putting it into a pivot chart, for example, or anything else that I want to do inside of Excel. So here I'm just going to quickly add it into a chart, nothing fancy, but I could take all of my data that's in the Power BI service and analyze it directly into Excel, provided we have permissions to do that. And then the last thing I want to show you is process holds. So you could monitor all of the process holds if you're using sales order process holds. And one of the things that you could also do here that's pretty cool is you could put a Power app right on the Power BI report. And if you do that, you can remove process holds and even email perhaps the salesperson or somebody that the process hold's been lifted, or maybe email the department that does fulfillment that hold has been lifted and it's now ready for them to go. So that's something else that you could do that's pretty cool. And then finally, I'm opened up Teams because I could take some of these reports and put them inside of Teams. So in the team, if I go to the top, I could see workspaces or apps. I could pull it up and I could pull in a single report from my Power BI app, and it will act and work just like the app does. So here is the report, and you could see I have access to all of that information. And then I could go through and even attach another page from that same app, so I could get some additional analysis. So I'm looking at the open SOP report here as well. So here is my open SOP report. The filters work the same way. And this one actually had multiple pages across the bottom, so I could tab through those additional pages. One more way you could add it, and first I want to show you, you could add Power Apps up here as well. So if we start typing in Power Apps, you could put a Power App in there to remove a SOP hold if you want to. But I could also go in and add in Power BI. So I'm going to go ahead and add in Power BI right here on the spot. And now I have access to my Power BI service right from the left side of the screen. So I could access it within Teams without having to go through my browser altogether. And that is something that the more we just are working in Teams, the more valuable that becomes. And it happens to be one of my favorite things that I love to do in Teams is look at my Power BI reports. All right, so I had a need to order area one where I took and created a variable for a DAX measure for surplus. And I said, take the available minus the open SOP quantity in base. And then that was the surplus. And then I wrote, if the surplus is less than 0, then I want the surplus times -1 to be what I need to order, because the surplus would be a negative number. So I'm going to turn around and make it positive. And then I can make it 0 if it is actually less than 0, because I don't want to order anything if I already have them in stock. So that's something else that we can do as well. And what we just looked at was using fields that are not in GP, like that need to order. I think that's a really cool thing. Or the available credit that someone has for sales opportunities, which is the next thing on the list. We did take a sneak peek at row level security, so you can provide that without having multiple reports. We did a very quick tour of Analyze in Excel. We looked at Teams. I didn't demo Power Apps, but you can do the Power Apps to update that information. Particularly things like sales process holds, because it's just one field in one table you could turn on and off. It's not like trying to add a whole sales order processing where you would need something like eConnect to help you. It's just a field within a single table that you could turn on and off. And likewise, if you happen to use the advanced SOP feature where you go in and you could take a video and say, it's ready for a picking now, it's been picked. You could also change that because that is also a single field inside of sales order processing. Now let's take a look at our last section here for SOP history. And this one's going to be a little bit different. I have excluded from SOP everything that was considered an open status. And I looked at the posting status particularly. So this is only including returns and invoices. And so again, I have some base information here that I could take a look at, including the frequency at which items for whatever date period I have filtered appears on invoices. Now, this is something I like to call the Chris Dopkins method, because this is something that Chris brings to the table for a lot of his customers. Chris is from Ingevity or Power GP Online, and I think it's brilliant. The more something appears on a document, you might want to make sure in your warehouse it's closer to the shipping area or where you actually pack up boxes and get them ready to ship, so you're not running all over your warehouse. So I like to point out the number of times it appears on a document. And again, I call that the Chris Dopkins method. And then down below, I have a chart that shows sales and gross margin for a particular time period. Now, this is a line chart where I am looking at the dates across, and I have both invoices and returns netted out here. And this is something called, I'm going to pause here for a moment. This is something called anomaly detection. This is another AI tool. So you can see the actual gross margin here, and this is gross margin across, along and along. And it's used AI for everything that's happened in the past to determine an expected value for that date. So the expected value was 1368. My actual gross margin was 1325, but it also gave me a minimum and a maximum. And since the actual gross margin fell, it wasn't the expected value, but you could see it was pretty darn close, but it fell within the minimum and the maximum. So at this point, there is no anomaly. So we'll get this started again. You can see I do have anomalies across the top and the bottom. It's everywhere you see a teardrop. And if you actually click on that anomaly, you'll get a potential anomaly explanation. And it's going to go through and give you some of different fields that it thinks might have some value in explaining why that anomaly occurred. And you could open up any one of these other fields, and I'm going to open up the ABC code, and you could see an explanation or a potential explanation for that anomaly. And you could use this with anything on a line chart so long as you have that field across the bottom. It's a really cool feature. Another thing you could do with AI is do something we call analyze. And what I'm going to do is just right mouse click and choose find where the distribution is. Now, I happen to be looking at the gross margin column, so it's going to take, I'm going to pause for another moment. It's going to take the gross margin, which is the blue chart, for this period, which is period 3 for 2027, and compare it with whatever's to the immediate left. And because I have this in most recent to oldest, it's comparing it to April of 2027. So I'm going to turn that back on. And in this particular anomaly, the gray lines that you're seeing are what actually happened for everything, where I'm looking at just this particular date here. And if I turn off doing the comparative one, I can see absolute values and see where things fall. So it's giving me some explanation, some potential explanation as to why something increased or decreased from the period immediately to the left. Now, this is a decomp tree, so I'm going to go ahead and close out everything except that very first option, and then I'll show you how this works. So I'm looking at gross margin for a particular period, and you can see the periods over here on the right. And if I click on that plus or minus, I could choose high or low, and it's going to use AI for all of these different options on the left to try to explain why the numbers are the way they are based off of the high. So which one has the most relevance of giving me a higher number? And I could keep working my way across. I could choose high or low, or I can manually choose a particular field. So I manually chose month, but I used AI for the rest of them. And if I select April, you'll notice that what's causing a variance changes. And no matter what I select, it will continue to change. So the decomp tree is a great ad hoc analysis. It's a great, why did this number come through? Now, before I go on to this next one, I want to stop for a moment because frequently I'm getting from end users that other people in the organization are loving Power BI and they want to be able to build their own Power BI reports. And that's great. And it's not that it's hard, but you have to make sure the data model is accurate or you're going to end up with bad information. And building the data model is probably about, in my mind, 70 to 80% of the work. And so to ensure people get the kind of reports that they want, because usually they just want to have visuals in a different way, I feel like doing something called personalizations is much better than letting them build their own report. And so I've turned on personalizations in the report before it was published. And now you notice there's an icon there. I'm going to turn it back on that enabled me to do personalizations. And if I select that, then now I can choose different personalizations, including what kind of chart I want to change. And I can even control which fields people see. And this is something that I absolutely love. So you can make all kinds of changes, including what fields there are. So you could take out the fields that are being used and put in other additional fields. And once you do this, you can even go through and then do something called a bookmark, which would save the screen with the personalizations the way you have them set, and including the way you have your filters set. And you could make that your personal default. And by doing that, then you can have your own custom building experience without getting lost in the details of how you build a data model and making sure that the data model's right. Because the worst thing that could happen for your Power BI methodology is everybody has their own version of the Power BI data set. And that's something we definitely do not want to happen. So I've now changed my report, and I could even come in and put it in small multiples, which is something I'm going to do there. So I have different reports set for different customer classes. And then once I get this done, to add a bookmark is very simple. All you have to do is go up to the top left corner and bookmark it. And then you can name your bookmark, and I'll call this Belinda's View. And this bookmark is only for you. It's a personal bookmark, and I'll make it my default view. So every time I use this report, even when the data refreshes, I see this particular bookmark, and I can go back and reset it to the original report just that easy. And that's how bookmarks work. Let's take just a review of what we did here. We looked at analyze when we were using that clustered column chart. We looked at anomalies for our sales data, the decomp tree or the decomposition tree, which is my favorite visual, and personalizations. So now it's time for Q&A. And before we get to Q&A, I do want to take time to give a special thanks to everybody at DynamicsCon and everybody who voted for my session. I hope you enjoy it, and let's get to your questions.
Not sure what happened there. Hi, everyone. This is Mark Rhodes, And I was here to assist Belinda with the Q&A, and we've got a little bit of some technical difficulty here. So we'll scramble and get Belinda on. Hey, everyone. I just got to say, I think there are a lot of head spinnings out there. What an incredible session. You feel like you get so much in such a short amount of time with Belinda. And I got to say, Michael Gummel said, it's like watching a magician. I couldn't agree more. I was wondering about how to describe what we just watched, and that's the perfect description. So thanks, Michael, for that. I'm also going to give a special shout out to David Musgrave, who I believe it's after midnight for David. And so thanks for hanging in there. Hopefully he hasn't nodded off in his chair there. Let's see. Go ahead and start putting some questions in the chat, and hopefully we will get Belinda back on in a minute here. I wanted to recover a couple questions that came up in the chat earlier to make sure everybody saw those. One was Mark Wiley asked, can the comments push to a Teams channel? Belinda said, yes, you can do chat over in Teams. And then Alea Hansen, hopefully I pronounced that correctly, asked where to get copies of the slides, to be able to get copies of the scripts. And Belinda posted in the chat a link to go get a copy of the slides. And I'll go ahead and put that in the chat here as well, again, in case you missed that. And Molly, thanks very much. Good to see you as well. And let's see, we're getting Belinda on. Hey, she made it. Yes.
Yeah, sorry, like 1 minute to go, my internet went down. So I'm on my phone Wi-Fi. So so glad that you're here, Mark, to take
that
the
is
call.
some quick scrambling. Amazing. So we're just saying hi to everyone and covering a couple of the questions that have already come up. And now we're looking for some new questions in the chat as well. But Belinda, I was just saying, it is like watching a magician. Michael was right. It's amazing how much you can pack into 50 minutes.
Well, Michael Gummel's my friend, so that's why he said that. And before I say anything else, notice, if you watch the keynote, watching the beginning of Scott Hanselman's thing, I put my hair in ponytails. So if you don't understand the meaning of this, then go back and watch it when it's on YouTube, because he's totally worth watching. So this is a homage to him. I'm a big fan of his. And you guys most of all, you probably know Mark Rhodes. He is a longtime GP user advocate. So thank you so much for moderating me and keeping me under control. So let's hit the questions.
Fantastic. So Jason Buckingham said, what is a great resource to help me learn how to connect to SQL data and get started building? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So connecting to SQL data is not that hard. So there is a caveat to it, though. When you want to refresh in the cloud, you do have to have a gateway. So that is something that's a little bit different. And with GP, that's something that you're going to end up having to have unless you use and have the means of an API, and not trying to sell anybody's service. But there are a couple ways you could get APIs. One of them is through PopDoc. If you happen to be an E1 user, PopDoc is their cool new tool. And when I say cool, I mean it's really cool. And it's so simple. And you can create disparate systems together. And then you can create an API. And then you could use the API and refresh it. And so that's something that's neat. And then there are some other partners that have APIs built in. And one of them, and my former the company that I work with for a while, Ingevity or PowerGP Online, they have a really cool answer to API solutions. But as far as learning, there are a lot of learning opportunities. I would first and foremost, I'm going to have to say that if you want to learn, fill out that form and write me a note. You'll get my email address too. I think it might be in the chat. I don't know, because I'm on my phone. I removed the other one. So Mark, maybe you could put my email in the chat.
Sure will. Yep.
And I do offer some classes, and I try to focus them on specifically on like a particular product line. And I happen to have one coming up which talks about that. So I get real specific into GP stuff. So which is why you might want to to consider my class, not trying to sell my service, but that's one of the things that I would recommend. Otherwise, Microsoft Docs has some good learning experiences. There are all kinds of classes on YouTube. Radacad, RADACAD, radacad.com has a subscription university. I've got a class out there as well. I actually have a class here. I think it's still open. It's for payables with Business Central, but it would still work. A lot of the information would still work for GP here at Doug at Dynamics User Group. So lots of different sources. Training is almost everywhere, but if you attend my class, it'll get GP specific. How's that?
Yes. Hey, so I posted Belinda's email address in the chat there. If you know Belinda, she loves to connect with folks and is such a big fan of the community. So definitely take advantage of that. William Thomas has a question too. This is I know this is going to resonate with you, Belinda. Any concerns with record locking in GP while using Power BI?
No, not at all. The reason for that is depending on how you get your data, and the recommended way and the best way to get your data in Power BI is to do something called an import rather than a direct connect. So what's going to happen is when you publish it to the cloud is going to be get the data refreshed. This is where the gateway comes in. So it communicates through the gateway to your local SQL server, and then it gets the data and it pulls it in, kind of like taking a smart list and dumping it to Excel. So all the data resides in Excel that you're reading. In the case of Power BI on the import method, all of the data resides inside of the Power BI file. So if you set it up, and I have a lot of clients that are really big that only refresh the data one time a day, and they do it in the middle of the night. And as a result, it's just happening in the middle of the night. Then when they come in, everything in Power BI is through yesterday. And so it doesn't cause any kind of record locking at all. And also depending on where you're getting your data. One of the things that I totally recommend, and we call it, what do we call it? The Roche, I can't remember what they call it. Matthew Roche is one of the developers for Power BI with Microsoft. And Matthew is always saying, so much so that he's had t-shirts made that try to do as much upstream as possible and as far downstream as necessary, meaning you want to do as much of your modeling as you can upstream. And in that case, in the case of SQL, you'd probably want to either create a view or a stored procedure. So getting that data from the view is not going to create any issue at all with record locking. It's just simply pulling it. So no concern at all for record locking.
Makes sense. I especially like that you mentioned even larger companies, they're just doing the download once a night. So you don't need it immediately. That's good.
It depends what you're looking at, right? And so if you have a lot of sales, you might want, if you have a big sales department constantly hammering in sales, you probably want to refresh more frequently than once a day. But for the most part, for most people in the SMB space, and I call the SMB space anyone from a one user system to just below Fortune 1000. So it's a big area. For most of those companies, refreshing through yesterday is very current. That's all they want. They don't want to see partial data that's in today. So, yeah.
Right. Cool. Excellent. I think we have time for maybe one or two or more questions.
Okay.
Did you mention something about some giveaways that are available?
Yeah. So I put it in the chat and it was on the screen. bit.ly.more from Belinda. I have uploaded. So during my presentation, instead of trying to type it all live to stay within the confines of the time, I had recorded those. So I have all 5 of those recordings available for download. So you could download them all individually. There's no sound on them, but you could look at them and try to recreate some of the things yourself. I also have template files of all 5 separate reports. So you could download that when you log in. When you double click on it, it'll open up Power BI. You do need to be on the latest version at the Power BI desktop. And it's going to ask you, well, first it's going to tell you that which views and or tables you need to have access to in the SQL Server. And then it'll simply ask you for the name of your SQL Server instance and the name of your GP company. And if you have never logged in with SQL before, it'll ask you for your SQL credentials, which are the same as your GP credentials. Usually, talk to your IT department about what that would be. And then you'll have all of those reports completely built out. Even the ability to publish and have the personalizations on that one I added personalizations for. So you have access to all of those reports. And then on the inventory one, I was joking. It was really a joke. Sorry, I have a weird sense of humor about buy the book. You'll get more views. That's the little Mark Polino that sits on my shoulder all the time. Say, push the bucks, push the bucks. I pick on him. The view that I used in the inventory one to get the rolling 12-month inventory, that one, or the rolling 12-month turnover report, that view, you saw it was in the slide deck. So the slide deck is also out there as a PDF, but I also have the SQL view too. So there's quite a bit out there for you to grab off of this.
Excellent. Yeah. 45 seconds. One more question.
Okay.
Have you seen any interest among manufacturers with Power BI and GP, and specifically SOP to MOP and SOP to POP?
Manufacturers, yes. I've worked with quite a few manufacturers in GP and other spaces. So they are finding they're absolutely loving it. I haven't done as much with SOP to POP, the link yet, but I'm expecting that to happen because it's becoming more, there's a bigger and bigger interest in the GP space and the SMB space all the way around. So was that faster than 45 seconds?
Well, that was.
I know.
First time.
Yeah, Mark was ready. He's got a cane over here ready to pull me off like Bugs Bunny.
Excellent. Thank you so much, everybody. Closing comments, Belinda?
No, yes. Oh, I always have something to say. You guys know that. If you haven't tried BI yet, you really need to invest in it. There is the return on investment is huge and it's incredibly valuable. So reach out to me, and if you have any problems with these views, or you want me to maybe pull something out, or these templates, or you want me to pull something out, like maybe you don't use inventory approval or PO approval and you want that pulled out, or you don't use SOP holds. So we can edit that up. But if you haven't tried using it, then you're really missing out on something powerful. And that's true also for Power Apps and Power Automate. So do yourself a favor, save yourself some money and have fun learning something new.
Indeed. Start playing. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of the conference. Great to see you all. Thank you, Belinda.
Thanks. And I'll see you guys over on David's viewing party. Thanks.